start the recording here. Okay. That started. Yeah. So it's the 1024 members meeting and active members meeting, and there wasn't any agenda planned. We have Pete, Gianno, Valentine, Enzo, and Ned Robertson here. Steve wanted to very quickly get an input into the bounty system, and I thought it would be a good idea to cover that. We haven't identified any other agenda items.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hey, Alan. Stephen's going to go. We just wanted to, I guess, give him some direction. He's just learning about the bounty system. And
okay, good. Are there any more attendees right now? Yes. Jim, I'd like to take over. Yeah, why don't you finish up, and then I have a couple of things to say. I want to focus this meeting on one particular issue, which is who owns the cooperative. And I'm glad that, let's see, I guess that's Valentine, but not Kevin Valentine. And I wish that Kevin Valentine were here.
Okay. So just to sum it up real quickly, we had a bounty system based on the 3 pirate rule. If you got 3 people to support your activity, it got funded. And then we added a guide system, and that didn't work very well. And now we have severe budgetary constraints, and coordination is the key word in what's happened to the bounty system. You have to coordinate with people inside the cooperative, marketing, development, and they basically sponsor your work from their own budgets in the bounty system. So they are requesting certain bounties that they add to the RChain.coop GitHub repository. And if you go there, you'll get instructions, which hopefully are...
Okay, Jim, so I think that's a good summary. And Steve, you can get more information anytime. There's contributing.md, and you can reach most of us on DM. Today, I'd like to address a particular question, which is who owns RChain Cooperative? I see Ned is here. I wish that Kevin Valentine were here. Ned and Enzo are here. Ned, do you have something to say about that?
Co-op isn't owned by anybody. And then the other mistake I think people make on Discord, neither are we shareholders. Right? This is the whole
When you say the co-op is not owned by anybody, what exactly does that mean?
It's an entity governed by rules, in this case set by Washington State. Nobody owns it. Nor are we shareholders, right? This is like the major mistake. Listen, I get people are emotional about their investment in Rock, but owning Rock does not make you a shareholder. The SEC, David Otto, et cetera, have been very clear about this. First, RChain Co-op does not pay dividends. Your Rock does not entitle, if there were profits, your holding Rock does not entitle you to any dividend.
So what would entitle anybody to any dividend? What would create a dividend event?
Nothing. Not if we're a co-op. You have to be a corporation that has shares.
So a co-op cannot make dividends. Is that what you're saying, Ned?
Nope. It's a co-op.
So Ned.
Think about a charity. Think about your favorite charity. Your charity does not pay you dividends, even though you make contributions to them. You know, if they do make a profit, they either have to spend it or reinvest it somehow, or keep it on the books for a rainy day. But they can't pay that out.
Well, we followed the RChain model, which you can.
Can people who are not speaking, please mute, please.
And based on the input. Based on
Whoever hosted the meeting can mute everybody.
Based on the income of
They not tell you what you don't go watch.
Jim, just mute them.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
based on the income of the cooperative, they will distribute the a dividend to members according to the amount of rock they have spent in the cooperative.
Where did you see that?
In the bylaws. This is the REA model. It works just like REA.
Okay, Jim. Jim.
Co-op makes income. Yeah.
I would like to see that because I have trouble believing that.
Jim. The articles of incorporation, which were copied from REI, are a fabrication. They're a fantasy. Nothing has ever been paid according to those. No dividends have been paid according to that. They will never be paid according to that.
Can I ask you a question on that? Because I'm a member of REI, right? I mean, I don't buy a lot of equipment there, but when I do, I get a discount.
Yes.
But I've belonged to them for 7-8 years now. Should I call them? Should I have been expecting a yearly dividend check? I don't think so.
Yes, you should call them, and they do. I'm also a member of REI, and they do pay dividends. They give you a credit or whatever. I don't buy a lot of equipment, so I'm not current with it.
So maybe I get a credit when I go.
Ned, I would like to submit to you that the cooperative can do whatever it wants with rock or with anything else, where whatever it wants is the key question. How is it determined what the cooperative wants to do?
You're asking great questions, Alan. The answers that you're giving me are very surprising to me. That's not how I thought the co-op ran.
Yes, in fact, there's been a deliberate attempt on the part of the current board of directors, led by Evan Jensen, to mislead people as to the role of membership.
All right, so let me just
Evan Jensen is apparently leaving today. I don't know whether or not he's engaged in activity that needs other follow-up, but I think we need to clear the air around this. I think we need to have a second annual meeting, and actually we need to have membership meetings every 2 months or so. We have a lot of items that come by us, and we need to put all these issues out into the open and get them voted by the membership, who are the owners of our cooperative.
Okay, so I agree with everything you said, and I will say what I've been saying for the last few weeks now. Well, one, I'm really surprised at Govern. They're smart people. That ballot was a travesty. If my understanding is that tonight can somebody go on mute, please? Thank you. My understanding is that tonight it's a members meeting. Any of us can propose items to be voted on from the floor. And if given the chance, I am going to propose, and I hope people back me, that the board, every single board member, immediately resign. And anybody, let me finish. And any member who was involved in the elections withdraw their candidacy, and that that we take a month and we propose a brand. First of all the work the board is doing.
Ned, you're saying a lot of things. I just want to respond to this election. Can I make a moderation on your proposal, which is we accept the election of whichever 4 board members were elected, and we schedule a second election for the remaining 5 board seats in December?
Because I totally disagree, and I'll tell you why. Abstaining from the vote like I did is not the same as voting no. Listen, I think everybody here knows computer science to some degree. There is a difference between a 0 and a null. Now, I grant you, most developers I train and I talk to don't understand the difference between a 0 and a null. abstaining to me was null. It doesn't exist. My power as a voter was to vote no, not abstain. It was to vote no. And I was not given that opportunity. I brought it up last week at the community meeting, and it was kind of just pushed aside. The whole way that ballot was structured to me is invalid. So but I'm not going to propose that tonight. What I am going to propose tonight is that the board, including those who may have been newly elected, resign immediately. We take 1 month for people to step up and nominate themselves for the board, and then we hold various town hall meetings where everybody gets 10, 15 minutes to talk to the community, and we'll have to figure out the structure of that. And then we hold another election 30 days from now. So the current board, every single one of them, I don't trust. And everybody says Meta is great, and Meta's a really nice person. She does a great job, but there is so much conflict of interest with the sweetheart contracts that Pyrofex has. Pyrofex isn't doing this work out of the goodness of their heart. They're making money hand over fist over us. $100,000 to run that Archon 3 in Berlin, which was mediocre at best. So I could go on and on, but I don't think any of the current board candidates or existing board are worthy to run our co-op.
Yeah, I think that's a losing proposition, and I think you should listen to Alan's alternative proposal, and maybe you come up with a different resolution.
It could be on the losing side before.
The reason for that is that if you try to make an argument in favor of binary voting over ranked voting, it's a losing argument. The collective intelligence, the quality of solution in ranked voting is much greater, much higher than binary voting.
So I agree to disagree, and I will give you one perfect real-world argument against what you're saying, Jim.
I'm just saying, whether you're right or wrong, I don't care if you're right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a losing argument.
I will just say, if anybody believes in ranked voting, look at the city of Oakland, California. They've been doing ranked voting for a while now for their mayor. It is the most despicable display of governance, and everybody knows it, but nobody has the balls to stand up and fix it. They get the third place mayor, they get the weakest mayor. So if you believe in ranked voting, just look at the history of voting for the mayor of Oakland, California, and I rest my case.
Well, there's a million ways to do ranked voting, and they probably did it the wrong way.
Just go look at them as a use case of failed ranked voting.
So, Ned, I think that the main problem with your suggestion of having the board step down immediately and an election of in 30 days is it's a little bit too chaotic. We need a little bit more continuity than that. So I think that's why I would be comfortable accepting the 4 board members that were elected. Perhaps we can revisit that in a period of 6 months or a year or whatever. But it's the other 5 board members, if they will, I think that those positions should open up for re-election. And I think 30 days is a little short. I think we need some regroup time. Things have been pretty fast and furious. But I think within a couple of months, we'll be ready for a new election.
So I could compromise on that. So if you wanted to propose that as a compromise, I would back that. The other thing I have to point out is, a board of governance, a board of directors, whatever you want to call it, are you typically not involved in day-to-day operations. And the fact that we don't have an executive committee, which is hired by the board, right? You would trust the board. They hire an executive.
We do have an executive committee. The problem is that the executive committee is subordinate to the board, and the board is composed of people that do day-to-day operations, including Kenny, who's Chief Operations Officer, CEO of Greg, and so forth and so on. So, Ned, I agree with what you're saying, and somebody needs to detail the language on that, detail the language on ranked voting systems. There's a lot to be done in terms of us getting to real self-governance that works.
I agree. I have to say,
Enzo, I know that you had some opinions from China. Are you able to speak to that? Enzo?
Sorry, I was away from the desk, and I missed some of the conversation.
a little louder, please, Enzo.
Oh, sorry. I missed some of the conversation for the last few minutes. So, which what are you particularly what do you particularly mean?
Ned, so Enzo, we were talking about having an election for the remaining 5 members, or Ned was suggesting that all of the board members be reelected. What do you think of the general principle of having bi-monthly meetings and elections that would be electing for either 5 or 9 of the current seats?
First, this is pure my personal view. I'm not representing anyone from the China community, but I'm totally up to the idea of bi-month or quarter member meeting, and I think I think we need to re-elect some of the members, but I haven't really thought that it should be all of them, or it should be the 5 that stay after the election tomorrow. Yeah, that's it.
David, do you have some ideas? You are interested in governance in general. Or Chidindu?
Yeah, I wanted to say something. It's quite funny, and that the voting process had to do with placing names. I think I agree so much. I've been following some of the discussions from Ned and also yourself, Alan, on Discord. I think it's if an election process should be either yes or no rather than a ranking, because if you're doing a ranking, although they posted the algorithm to the way candidates are selected, but a ranking would mean that everyone gets to vote for every other candidate that coming, and that's not the way election processes are supposed to go.
I wonder whether that should be a bounty issue, Ned, or some kind of issue with a committee, just a committee to follow it, to figure out what kind of voting systems we need and what kinds of votes we need to take. Maybe there are different votes for different kinds of issues.
I think a committee is a great idea, and you could form a committee and they can make a proposal at the next board meeting. Or a community meeting. I'm not sure of the proper way, but you could form a committee and those interested can hash out all the ugly details and then we can make a proposal.
But I'm yet to understand why the voting was not the regular yes or no kind of voting. I'm still yet to understand why that wasn't done that way.
Hello.
I don't know if you missed the beginning. Wait,
I think the voting was because last year, when the voting was done, the number of candidates, there's a way the number of the tenures were staggered, because everybody on the board now underwent a voting at one time. The campaign on the voting period for everybody on the current board was at the same time. So back then, the reasoning for the ranked voting was the people with highest votes get to stay the longer term, stay longest. For example, if you come top, you stay for 3 years, and it's ranked like that. That's why they use. I don't really understand why it has to be used this year. But for last year, it was because of the tenures. So the ranking was
The
used to
truth is,
determine who stays 2 years, who stays 3 years, who stays 1 year. That was determined based on the ranking. Though I still believe that I actually didn't like the way it was the voting went, because at some point I didn't want to vote for some things, but you could not submit that the ballot without having to rank some, and that's not ideal. That's not ideal.
Yes. I think that's what Ned is saying.
I would just say that if you can hear me now, David, that ranked voting done well, where you're allowed to choose up to 3 of 10 or 20 candidates, has been shown to get much better results than binary elections, which.
Jim, are you prepared to like work with Ned and Ojimadu on these kinds of, expose the issues and put it in a way that the membership can make intelligent decisions around this?
And I think the kind of decision you're making determines whether ranked voting applies. I think in this case it was misapplied, but.
So there was a ranked vote for candidates and there was a ranked vote for IOB 5. The ranked vote for candidates I didn't particularly understand, but since there are only 5 candidates for 4 positions, it doesn't seem like we were voting very much anyway. And as far as IOB 5 was concerned, yes, there seemed to be no way to vote no.
Right. And I have to say I appreciate Shinjindu's color and background on the information. I did not know that, and so that would have led me to say, why were we voting for different periods of time for different board members? I kind of don't know if I've ever heard of such a thing. I don't know every single corporation's board structure, but that seems like that's how they would try to solve the problem, but it was ineffective. I would be willing to work with Jim. We may end up spending a month beating each other up for our various opinions, but I'd rather do that with Jim and other folks in a smaller group and then kind of come to some consensus if possible. If we actually can't come to consensus, then we should, there's no reason a committee can't present 2 different ideas.
Yes, committees certainly can present different majority, minority opinions and so on. That would be great. So, Ned, will you take that as an action item? Who's got the action item on that to follow up?
Sorry, I was on mute. Sure, I could do that.
Okay.
Yeah, we did have some voting issues in GitHub. I tried to kick the voting and the voting activity a few times, but Jake was handling it for a while, then he dropped out, whatever. Rao was involved with it. We just never got anything done. And if we had done our job, this wouldn't have happened. We can't really blame the co-op.
Well, there's no guarantee that, Jim, even if you had something that anybody on the board would have listened to you. I mean, I hate to put it this way.
Ned, why? I'm going to double down on what Jim said. Why are we pointing at the board? Who owns the cooperative?
But the board the board is the gatekeeper.
Why? Because
they have the power and nobody is challenging them. And so look at Reflective. Reflective put 5 people as nominations for the board, and Deanna and the board decided not to accept any of them. I don't know all of them, but I know 2 of them, and they're highly respected people in the tech community.
So why did nobody challenge that?
Well, you did. You saw Shahan and Renault go pretty much. Excuse my language. I hope there are no children present.
Ballistic.
Okay, ballistic. You saw them go ballistic on Discord, and nobody from the board even bothered to respond to them.
Okay, well, I think, as we said before, that there should be an election held in December for these remaining 5 board seats. I think that the 5 candidates that Reflective fielded, plus the candidate that Enzo is supporting, plus Phil in Germany, I think we can get a very nice list of candidates.
Is that Mao? Is that Mao that Enzo was supporting?
Yeah,
yes,
Mao
Enzo.
is one of the people I am supporting.
Okay. So I'm just going to go public. I've said this before, but the fact that Mao won't reveal who he really is, I don't really pay attention to anything. Even though he says some good things, until he reveals who he is, guys, come on. There are tons of people in this world who will pretend to be people and say they've got $1 million or 100,000 backers, and it's just some guy sitting in his basement. So until Mao reveals who he really is.
Ned, I have a lot of sympathy for that. And Enzo and Jonathan are here. Do you guys have any more information about Mao that you'd like to share now?
Okay, Jonathan, you go first.
No, actually, Enzo, you go first.
Okay, first, to Nat, I totally agree with you that if Mao or anyone is going for the board, he or she should reveal his identity. And but I frankly, I have never met Mao in real life, in person. But we talk a lot. We especially recently, we talk every day, a couple of times. And from the, he has published like 20 or 30 articles about RChain, especially at the end of last year or the beginning of this year. So I have read all of them, and based on the conversations I've seen in the China group, in the China community, I think it will be very, very hard for me to believe that he is not what he claims he is. But still, and I'm not speaking for him, but I think he will somehow make more exposure of himself if he is officially running for the board. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
Ned,
I
does
think
that meet your requirement?
No. Listen, I've been in crypto. I'm an old timer. I've been in crypto for over a year now. And I have seen people just like Mao, and when the curtains are pulled back and they're revealed, they turn out to be total scam artists. So,
okay, but somebody who represents the China community, who's willing to reveal his identity, who's willing to be public about it, that would be okay with you. Is that correct, Ned?
Yeah.
The day Mao comes out of the chat. Now, listen, I get maybe. I hate to be politically incorrect, but maybe China's more repressive and he's scared to come out, and that's a valid point. But to me, I'm going to take everything that he says with a grain of salt, and I could not back him for anything until he revealed himself.
Well,
Okay,
remember, if he went through a KYC with the co-op and they vouched that he was legit in some way, would he have to reveal his identity to the rest of us?
Yeah, I brought that point up, and I was told no.
Hey, hello everybody. This is Jonathan. Having been in Asia and developing RChain Asia for 4 months, I think I have some useful perspectives here as a cultural intermediary?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, it is the case that Washington law, where the co-op is instantiated, requires certain kinds of disclosures and checks. So anybody that comes onto the board, regardless of how popular with any sector of our membership, needs to go through those things by law. Second, we are in a situation here where much of the uproar, some justifiable, some unjustifiable, about co-op has to do with the fact that we're not following our own rules, much less suspicion that we're not following other kinds of rules. So to make any kind of exception for any party, no matter how popular by any sector of our community, would be two wrongs don't make a right. I think at this point, we have to be impeccable in following our rules, broken or not. We need to fix our rules, of course. But as much as I want to have representation of the Chinese community, or the Asian community generally, but realistically, given the reality of the numbers, the Chinese community, yes, we want to have somebody on board, but we should follow protocol. The protocol is evolving, but there's also laws. You need to follow laws.
Enzo, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I am 100% agreed, and I personally will try to not convince, to talk to Mao that if he is really running for the board, he should he should do it by the law, and at least reveal more to the community.
Right. And another thing is, and this is a cultural thing, which I really did not appreciate until, I'm going to say 2 weeks ago, which is that unlike, or let's say even more so than in Western crypto communities, influencers in Asian communities, and especially in China, really have a disproportionate amount of credibility to a largely uninformed community. And if an influencer in China, for example, says something, that is accepted as truth without credibility, without examination or without examination. And that's no criticism of Mao, but that is an observation about the kind of influence that a person like Mao has with RChain and in other, blockchain or crypto projects. There are certain people that really just have a megaphone, and people will just follow whatever is said. So that's not a criticism of Mao. That's not a criticism of the importance of the Chinese community, but that is a kind of reality that those of you who have not been in this community cannot appreciate. Enzo, is that approximately correct?
Yeah, it's correct. It's correct. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have a communist party.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Jonathan, and I appreciate that. It's like Justin's son at Tron, and I'm not saying anything bad about Tron, but he gets up there. They treat him like a rock star.
Right, and it's an open secret in the Chinese communities that crypto projects or blockchain projects will quietly hire an influencer and engage in practices. And I'm not saying this about Mao at all. I think Mao's intentions are really good. I think Mao truly believes in the technology and has good intentions. But it is the case that money will buy power, and the power in the Chinese crypto blockchain community is amplified disproportionately by these power.
So, Jonathan, having said all that, and Enzo, still, it is a large community. It is a very, very important community for us. And I think that it would be important to find some candidate or candidates that can complement, as Jonathan, as you say, there's many things we don't know about Asia. There's many things we don't understand that can bring that diversity into our board. I would like very much to see that in a December type time frame.
Yeah,
Well,
I second that 100%, and Asia's big, so we probably need more than one person representing what we consider Asia.
Well, Alan, Ned, and everybody else, this is a very important point that has not escaped the attention of the currently only 2 employees of RChain Asia who are trying to keep it all together. And not everybody here may know this, but I've actually purposely pulled my compensation from RChain down to minimum wage and am redirecting the rest of my salary to onboarding community engagement and community development and engagement parties that will really act as a curator of this large community. There are more members of RChain discussion groups in China than there are in the rest of the world. I keep saying this. I don't think people are hearing me.
No,
And this,
I hear you loud and clear, Jonathan, and I want to put this out there. And, one focus of ours can be on the co-op and fixing the co-op. I also want to tell you guys, as in the head of the solutions group, every day I'm talking to amazing people who are building or wanting to build projects on top of our platform. I mean, the ideas baffle me how amazing they are, and the talent out there is incredible. And so if Mao or anybody in Asia has money and they want to create a separate entity, because there's no reason a solutions group has to be part of RChain. In fact, even Greg Meredith's vision was that in some 6-month or period in the future, the solutions group would spin off into its own entity. And I'd be happy to talk to any investor from anywhere who has the money to fund a solutions group. And I have a business plan. It will be profitable. And I just want to put that out there. We don't have to do everything through the co-op.
I also want to point out, though, that one of, I think, these tragic strategic errors of the co-op was that it created multiple parties. When you create multiple parties, you create tribes. When you create tribes, you create the opportunity for distrust, backtalk, backstabbing, and that's, from an evolutionary biologist, behavioral ecologist perspective, who's studied animal behavior, we've actually exacerbated the possibility of tribal and conflicting sets of interests.
Jonathan, are you willing to be more specific?
Look at Discord and Telegram for the past 2 months, and look at all the tribalism and backstabbing
what has the co-op done to exacerbate that situation?
Creating a situation of multi-bodies that are putatively all engaged in the same interest and have diverged.
So your opinion would be that there's an RChain cooperative, it's a worldwide cooperative, there should not be regional whatever mumble.
No, you're missing my point, and that's okay.
Can you explain to me, please?
Yeah, can you give a couple examples? I don't quite follow, Jonathan.
Okay, my point is that, gosh, it's Johnny on the spot. It's Otter on the spot. Okay, so I posit that in the creation of RChain Asia, we are going to try to create a situation where there is a unitarian approach to the multiple things that our project wants to achieve within this geography. Now, yes, of course, I'm saying that there will be a geography with a certain geographical interest, and that might be at odds with the interests of RChain Co-op North America, which essentially it is, RChain Europe, and so forth. But being an evolutionary biologist, I also understand how symbiosis works, how mutualism works, how there can be give and take. I think that, okay, let's just say that I'm giving this considerable thought. And I'm giving it considerable thought, given my understanding and observations about what has happened and what has failed with the current experiment. I'm also giving it considerable thought on the basis of the mathematics and dynamics of co-evolving systems and mutualism and political philosophy. And it's a work in progress. So let's just say that.
Thanks,
All right.
Jonathan.
This is, this cooperation at scale, collective intelligence is something that we could have enabled much better, and hopefully we will. And certainly, we appreciate your efforts in that area. I'm doing the same thing in the co-lab and I'm donating my own. A good part of my own SOW work to try to incubate this cooperation at scale from the bottom up. So I don't know what action item comes out of this. Anything with respect to the members meeting or the board. I did want to get feedback on Doug Rushkoff as a board member. He's willing to serve. He did attempt to submit a form, but it failed. There was some knowledge that he was willing to be on the board, and nobody reached out to him. But I have a feeling that he would keep them honest.
Well, that would be a special election. And I really do think that there will be a need for a special election in the coming months.
Yeah.
Jonathan, we've been speaking about having a regular special election or a regular special meeting because our environment moves very quickly. We should probably have a membership meeting every couple of months or at least every quarter.
Yeah, I agree. We can work out the issues. We can bring them to the meeting and let the members decide. And, that's the right way to do it.
To some degree, we're in a situation where it's not about strategy. Tactics have to become strategy at times.
I'm just talking about cooperation, which, if we're going to solve the problems facing humanity, we have to cooperate at scale. And
I think what John, strategy is the overall idea, then tactics are what you do to make it happen.
Right. Oh, I want to share one other thing. And some of you are aware of this and are going to say, oh, Grandpa, you're telling this story again. But I think you all need to be aware of the fact that I've been through 9 startups. I've been through startups that have failed catastrophically. I've been through startups that I've helped save. I have been through one startup that has succeeded incredibly well. And every one of the startups, there's a quotation from Tolstoy that all happy families are alike in their happiness, and every unhappy family is unique in its despair. Or maybe it's the other way around. The point is that there are certain things that I notice repeated over and over again in these 9 startups. There are certain things that happen. And one of the wisest things that Jeff Bezos said to me in one of my startups, when we got to about 70 people, he said, there is such a thing as too much communication. And what he meant by that was we got to a certain size where everybody wanted to talk to everybody else, and then he instituted the 2 pizza meeting thing. Oh, thank you, Ned. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And I disagree with Tolstoy. I think that a lot of unhappy families are actually very similar and isomorphic in the patterns of their failures. And I just want to bring that up for something for you all to think about and to cogitate on your own experiences with other organizations and to try to identify the commonalities and what worked in solving the pathologies of those families.
Yeah, I've also been involved in a few startups, not 9. You know, to me, being a manager is kind of like being a parent. You don't tell your children as much as you want to be open and honest. But for instance, if the father or mother fell on hard economic times, you wouldn't necessarily tell that to your children, whether they were 8 or 18. Sometimes there's no reason to create uncertainty and entropy for folks.
But there are also times where if one of the parents wants to spend all the family's food money on some bauble, that challenges the entire family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you need the wisdom of the leadership. And I'll bring back to our board. We don't have wisdom currently in our board directing the co-op.
Grandpa will shut up. Carry on.
And Grandpa too will shut up.
Okay, so with that, maybe this is a good place to ask if there are any more questions. I'm not sure that the community debrief will be held today, but if it is, it's in 5 minutes. Does anybody have any more comments or?
I would just like to.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, what's your question?
I added it to the log notes. I want to know pathia stance with RChain. Where, as in, are they still still with RChain or because I'm hearing things about pathia recently. I want to be clear on that.
There was some chatter about pathia, and it's not clear what's going on with that. And it quieted down very dramatically, so it's not active right now.
I'm not sure why there is, because they clearly sent a letter, and I think the co-op, from what I could read, is trying to clarify Greg Meredith's monumental mistake of telling them we wouldn't be ready till April 1st, which is obviously past the quarter he's promised of March 31st. So I think they're trying to double back. And
so apparently there was a typo in a date that caused a firestorm, and I think the issue of pathia should come to the fore, but probably not in the 1 day or 2 day time frame, but it's a 2 month or 2 year time frame where what actually happened with pathia and what rock were transferred to which individuals, that's kind of something that's going to take a little while to come out in my
opinion. And for me personally, to me it's good riddance. I don't think they were an honest player in our ecosystem, and I think they were looking for an excuse.
Okay, Ned, I will just take the liberty of saying there's more, I think, than meets the eye here, and I would not rush to judgment.
I know a lot more also, and I can't reveal it, but yeah.
I see.
Okay, and I want to close with one correction, or not correction, but a comment. I do think that Mao is a incredibly valuable member of our community, and anything I said about restricting his ability to serve on the board, pending certain requirements and whatnot, is not in any way, or also saying that maybe this individual has undue power that we're not used to in this community. I do want to see Mao's observations and thoughts considered in ways that will be for the good value of RChain. He is very passionate about the project. I think it would be a really good thing to collect his many writings about RChain, supportive writings about RChain, and translate them properly into English, not Google Translate, but properly, and share them with the community. I think that would be a good first step in stitching together better the Chinese community. And
what's a good way to proceed with that, Jonathan? Should that be something that you guys undertake? Should it be a bounty issue? How you want to take ownership of that?
Yeah, I've got a brilliant Chinese translator who was the main translator for Neo. No, yes, I think Neo and Bitcoin
Cash. Yeah.
Yes, and she is revered as a technical translator in the blockchain community. So I can ask Cindy to do that at 10 cents a word. She's professional. It's not a bounty thing, and I think it would be really good to let the non-Chinese speaking community really know more about Mao. I think Mao is worthy of consideration, but we need information.
Yeah, and I think we should give him an executive position anyway. I mean, either on the executive committee or as a manager.
With proper identification and with exposure, as Jonathan is saying, of what his writings are that are influential.
And Jim, I wouldn't jump to any decision about particular roles. I think that this is something that needs to be considered properly and needs to be mutual communication and fully in the open is the point that I'm making.
Yeah. This is a good use case. I mean, I've had dozens of communities, online communities, that we've researched or observed, and they all sort of hit that 70 people thing, and then they become dysfunctional and they die. These border protocols of how we get one group talking to another and getting value between them is, I think, our key challenge. And I think great.
Okay, thanks for entertaining that last point that I really wanted to make, especially because this is a publicly available channel, and I want to jump onto the debrief.
Okay, let's thank everybody for attending.
Really appreciate it.
Do I make this public or unlisted? Public, right?
Yes, it's public. Sure, certainly.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.